So last week I thought I was being jolly clever by trying to put reform in a bit of a bind. I started pushing this idea on Twitter and it was, nicely circulated that what we needed to be doing is we needed to be catching reform in the same trap that Labour got it put in, of course. Now, Labour, they couldn't define what a woman is, and for a long time people would ask them this and they just flounder on the question. So I thought, well, we can do exactly the same thing with reform, because reform are at least a bit squishy when it comes to the whole who's a Brit type situation. So I thought we put this question to them, and it will force them to even harden up on the issue or to reveal their treachery. And I thought this was all terribly clever. However, a reporter did exactly what I was suggesting and put the question to them. It was actually in the context of the Welsh, because Farage was visiting Wales and said, "Look, can you define what a British person is?" And Farage instantly, without hesitation, was like, "Oh, it's anyone who's just lived here, anyone who's lived here. That guy who turned up on the boat 2 years ago. By the next election, he's going to be as British as you are." Now, you may very well, have family living here for the last 10,000 years. Doesn't matter. Guy who got here 2 years ago, by the next election, he is going to be exactly as British as you are. No fundamental difference. So, yes, let's go to the clip. Here we are, and listen to Farage explain what it takes to be of this nation, or one of its constituent nations like Wales.
You say that you would like to give priority to people from Wales for housing. How would you define a Welsh person?
Well, it's a very fair question from your channel. We hadn't proposed the Welsh language test. No, look, it's got to be somebody who's lived and is settled in Wales, has paid taxes and obeyed the law. And if someone's done that for a 5 or 10 year period, then I think they've every right to say that they're fully part of the Welsh community.
There we go, fully part. All it requires is being here for 5 years, and you're in. And that's it, you're done. So this is British attitudes towards immigration over the last 10 years. 70% of Brits think that immigration has been too high over the last 10 years. Now, bear in mind, it is Reform's stance that come the next election, the entire Boris-Wave and all previous waves of immigration, but including the most recent Boris-Wave, the 6 million people that we had jammed in just a couple of years, all of them are going to be British. So it is the Reform stance that all immigration over the last 10 years was obviously about right, because otherwise they'd be planning to do something about it. Otherwise they wouldn't be saying that the entire Boris-Wave were British come the next election. So, yeah, let's look at these numbers. So 70% think that immigration has been too high over the last 10 years. That is not Reform's position. They think it has been just right, and those people, by the next election, will be just as British as you are. So where are they? They're the purple line, 15%. Oh, that's the next most popular line. So there we go. So you can see why Reform is the most popular party in this country, because they're adopting the second most sensible position, which is about right. Then, of course, you've got Labour and the Conservative Party, who are adopting the blue line at the bottom there, 3% of people who think that it has been too low. Of course, the Conservatives, not only did they give us that enormous wave of immigration under Boris, but they were still doing it by the time they left. Labour today is still importing with the taps off. Well, the taps on full flow. The little dialy thing on the top has been removed entirely at this point. So I've just got a simple question here: is why is it that we have 4 political parties, Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dem and Reform, that all occupy positions of 15% support or less? Why do we not have a single political party in this country that is representing the 70% of people? Now, you can see why, Reform, they get to their, whatever it is, 29, 30%, whatever they're on at the moment, is because basically they get all of the 15% who think that it's been the right amount, and they probably get some of the 70% who think that this is our best choice for now. Thus they get to about 30%. But what a gap in the market. Anybody could come along with, well, if they're allowed to have a party. I mean, if you tried to start a party in this country that was against immigration, you'd never get approved by, the polling authority, whatever they're called. You'd never get a bank account. You'd be harassed. You'd be shut down. The police would raid your house. So we're not allowed to have a political party that 70% of the British public would want to vote for. Right. Absolutely brilliant. On top of that, this is their new chairman. New chairman, Dr. David Bull. What does he think about immigration?
Immigration is the lifeblood of this country. It always has been.
Right. Immigration has been the lifeblood of this country, says new Reform chairman David Bull. What does he mean by this? Well, lifeblood, it is you cannot live without it. It is fundamental. Cannot survive without lifeblood. Not an animal that can do it. And what he is telling us is that Britain simply could not survive without immigration. Right. So if we had been like Japan all these years, we wouldn't be alive as a country. We would have just died off, would we? What is it that Reform think that is so fundamentally broken about British people that we must have infinity Africans, otherwise we cannot survive as a people? In fact, the only way that we can survive as a people is apparently to dilute us to the point where as many Africans as possible are shoehorned into the country. Okay then. While I'm doing a little tour of treachery, I thought I might as well pop in this as well, because this is another bit that might have got a little bit lost. Here is Nigel Farage talking about the Welsh Assembly, an additional tier of government that Blair imposed upon us. Now, what has the Welsh Assembly given us? They've given us 20-mile-an-hour limits in Wales. They've given us fiscal ruin. They gave us the toughest COVID lockdowns. They're looking to move that 20 miles an hour down to 10 miles an hour. So in order to get around anywhere in Wales, you're going to have to be crawling along at 10 miles an hour, not that much more than bloody walking speed. And what does Nigel Farage think about this unnecessary, woeful new layer of government?
Would you still allow candidates to be anti-devolution for the Senate election?
No. I mean, that ship has completely sailed. There's no room for this. We're seeing devolution now across much of England as well. It's time that everybody here in Wales accepted this has happened. This clock is not going to be turned back. It's about how we do it better.
So they have to sign up.
Right, so Nigel Farage is now at the point of binning people from Reform if they disagree with the Blair New Deal. Blair came in, he made a whole load of constitutional changes. He set us up with whole tiers of new government, took power away from Westminster, stuffed it into these new bodies, stuffed these new bodies with his friends to ensure that even when he is out of office, he's never out of office because his friends are running everything meaningful about powers in the UK forever. Right? It should be absolute standard for any even remotely based party to just simply strip this all away. Just get rid of it all. But no. The Blair New Deal has to stay, according to Reform. You can see why the establishment want Farage. You can see why the BBC is endorsing Farage, why all the mainstream papers are endorsing Farage. It's because, the establishment, they want to push their agenda. I get that. But absolutely more fundamental than that, they want to protect what they already have. Now, they know they've pushed incredibly hard over the past few years. Taxes are up over the last 5 years by 70%. Immigration is up many millions. Apparently 6 million. Wouldn't surprise if it was 10. They want to lock in their gains. The state is the only section of employment that has grown. And yes, of course, they'd love to push all of those things further, but the first and fundamental goal is make sure you never, ever retreat on anything. And here's Farage, who's coming along, and he is taking all that energy from the 70% the people who want something better for this country, who want this country to actually be a thing. He is sucking up all of the energy from that and channeling it into making sure that the establishment does not need to take a single step back on anything. He is going to gold plate in their gains from over the last 10 years. And yes, they'd love to push a little bit further, and he probably won't let them push too much further, but it's just, you know, the pot is boiling. They're just taking the lid off a little bit, letting the pressure out so that they can keep everything they've got. And Farage is their man for this. Because those guys turning up on boats, those guys that you see loitering around outside those hotels, getting put up at your expense, come the next election, they're all going to be as British as you are. And Nigel Farage is going to be the guy who locks that in, who cements that status in. He can win an election and then he can kick this issue to the long grass for 10 years, at which point he can then just say, well, look, these people have been here for 15, 20 years now. What on earth are you going to do? They've got kids in our schools. What are you going to do? This is locked in. This issue is done. Forget about it. You're out if you question any of this. I saw AA's take on this. Another chap who, like me, perhaps on an intellectual level understands what a traitor Farage is, and yet didn't quite internalise it to the right extent, like I didn't when I thought I could get them in the trap, because no, actually Farage just runs straight into it saying they're as British as you are. A couple of weeks back, AA said that Farage needs to lure Starmer into calling him racist, but now we're more likely to see Farage calling Starmer racist at this point. Yes, because Farage is establishment. The establishment want Farage. He's going to give them everything they want. He's going to lock in their gains for the last 10 years. All I can say is, if there is another politician out there who speaks our language, who understands what needs to be done, for God's sakes, this is the moment to come forth, Rupert.